Blue Marvel. Marvel has several powerhouse characters who are effectively its answers to Superman, and one of those heroes is Hyperion. Ever since the first incarnation of the character debuted in Avengers number 69, Hyperion has been one of the most powerful figures in the Marvel multiverse in all of his forms. But none of those forms have been as destructive or dangerous as King Hyperion, a reality-traveling threat who destroyed entire worlds and their most powerful heroes before making his way into the main Marvel universe. But King Hyperion didn't stand a hope in hell against the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel Adam Brashear is one of the best Marvel superheroes, one of my favorites and one of the absolutely undefeatable. He's taken on all the Avengers' entire alien armadas, he has lifted a meteor the size of Arkansas and guided it away, and he's uppercutted the hell out of the Ultimate Universe Hulk. Hyperion says he's defeated Blue Marvels before, but he hasn't faced Earth 616's. While he put Blue Marvel down initially, when Hyperion threatened the innocent bystanders nearby, Blue Marvel found a new strength. Letting loose in a way he hadn't before, it took 5 blows before Hyperion was out cold and Blue Marvel stood over him victorious. Number 9. Thor and Hyperion. With the end of the multiverse staring down the heroes of the 616 Marvel Universe across the Jonathan Hickman run on Avengers and New Avengers, Thor and a handful of other heroes like Hyperion, Starbrand, Nightmask, Ex Nihilo, and Abyss ventured across the multiverse to confront the Beyonders, responsible for the collapse of the Marvel multiverse. Now, wielding the hammer of Thor, that's with 2 R's, which can only be used by those that are considered unworthy, Thor went into battle alongside the others, giving everything he had and helping bring down just 2 of the Beyonders at the cost of his arm in New Avengers number 32. Now, after facing just 2 of the Beyonders, only Thor and Hyperion survived the battle. Unfortunately, that battle ended just for another to begin as an entire army of Beyonders descended upon them. In one of the most badass moments in Marvel Comics, realizing that Thor can no longer wield Thor with 2 R's hammer because he has proven himself worthy once again, Thor and Hyperion laugh together and race each other to Valhalla as they throw themselves into this one final battle against an enemy that they have no hope of defeating. Number 8. Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau is an insanely powerful cosmic hero, and being one of the heroes to hold the title of Captain Marvel, we would expect no less. Way back in Avengers number 248, a battle was taking place between the Avengers and various Olympians. One of the main fights taking place was between Zeus, a sky father on par with Odin himself, and the god of thunder himself, Thor. Now, to be quite frank, Zeus thrashed Thor like he was a badly behaved little boy. Zeus had Thor down and is about to literally wipe him from this plane of existence when out of nowhere, Monica Rambeau shows up. Shooting Zeus with a little blast of energy that cuts his arm, she orders him to back off of Thor or she will do much worse. Now, Zeus, obviously not seeing her as a threat, fires off a lightning bolt that simply phases right through her living light body, doing absolutely nothing to her. So, in retaliation, she tells him the gloves are off and flies in, hitting Zeus with a blast that lights up the entirety of Olympus. And while Zeus was not defeated, Thor makes note of the fact that Monica hurt him more than any mortal had ever done before, and it shows. Number 7. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is easily one of the strongest of Marvel's cosmic heroes. He can do some absolutely insane things, and he has had some massively impressive fights. But one of the ones that I think shows just how powerful he is would be his first ever fight against Null, the symbiote god. At the start of 2018's Guardians of the Galaxy series by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw, the Silver Surfer was swallowed in a black hole that transported him billions of years into the past, landing him in Silver Surfer Black. At the beginning of time, Silver Surfer faced Null in battle when the symbiote god was just beginning to rise in power, and it was one hell of a fight. Null proved to be an extremely difficult opponent, which we know he is from his fight against literally all of Earth's heroes. Silver Surfer was going to the extent of his power trying to defeat Null in combat, and Null is still getting the best of him using All Black the Necro Sword and his other symbiotes. With Surfer on the ropes facing off against the God of Darkness, he uses the last little bits of his power cosmic that he has to create an entirely new sun point blank in front of Null's creepy little face. While he knows it doesn't defeat Null permanently, it does defeat him for the time being, and it's just super awesome. Number 6. Superman. In Superman number 127, we are introduced to Titano the Super Ape. Now, he started off as a smart ape named Toto that was sent into space, but then was accidentally exposed to radiation from 2 colliding meteors. Now this, for some reason, grew Toto into a massive King Kong style ape who was now named Titano, and it also gave Titano the ability to fire rays of green kryptonite out of his eyes. I don't know. Obviously that is a big problem for Superman, who couldn't really get in close to this super cryptovision ape. But luckily, Superman's girlfriend is able to trick Titano into wearing lead sunglasses that stop the kryptonite rays, at which point Superman just picked up the giant super ape and threw him back through time. Superman chucked his super monkey through time back to the prehistoric era where he could interact with dinosaurs. Yes, Superman is so strong that he can literally throw things through time. He's also thrown Jimmy Olsen through time before, but who cares? This is a giant ape. Number 5. Franklin Richards. While he may not be considered entirely a cosmic level superhero, Franklin Richards, the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, is destined to become a key factor in the cosmic landscape of the Marvel Universe. His power to warp reality is so great that he has created entire pocket universes. Now, in one reality, appearing in Fantastic Four Volume 1, number 604, Franklin appeared as an adult, and we saw a glimpse of just how powerful he can be. In the story, a grown Franklin and Valeria Richards worked together with their grandfather, Nathaniel Richards, to travel into the past to influence their younger counterparts and to help fight against the mad Celestials that were threatening the entire world. Galactus was called on by the Fantastic Four to help, and although he brought down one Celestial, the others combined their power and were too much for Galactus to handle. Enter Franklin. Restoring Galactus and imbuing him with enough cosmic energy to stand up to the Celestials, Franklin turned Galactus into his own herald, defeating the Celestials and then being humble enough to give up that power after the fight was over. All the other heroes could do was just look up into the sky and watch in awe. It was actually kinda epic. Number 4. John Stewart Green Lantern. A Green Lantern's power ring is capable of almost anything, but even it has its limits. However, that didn't stop John Stewart from attempting to recreate an entire solar system in Green Lantern number 26. When reflecting on the destruction of the planet Zanshi and its solar system, which is an event that John blames himself for, the hero tried his damnedest to try and bring the world back with just his ring. He broke past the programming of his ring and got pretty damn close to completely rebuilding the entire solar system. Unfortunately, such a construct was too much even with John's iron will, but the fact that he got so close shows how far a power ring can really go when effort is put into it. But let's try one even more than that, shall we? Yeah. Number 3. Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan was possibly the greatest Green Lantern ever, according to the comics at least. But in the 90s, that kinda changed. After the death of Superman and the subsequent reign of the Supermen, Coast City, Hal Jordan's home, was destroyed. This completely changed the Lantern, and he completely broke the programming of his own power ring to revive the city. He created the entire city's layout with all of its buildings, parks, streets, everything. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the same. It needed life. So Hal went completely against the Green Lantern's rules and made constructs of all the once living inhabitants of Coast City, millions of people. When the Guardians of the Universe tried to stop him, he completely snapped. He went off the handle, ending the lives of every Green Lantern and naming himself Parallax. Hal became a threat to the whole DC universe for like a decade before eventually sacrificing himself. Sure, he went bad, but he absolutely did not hold back against anyone. Number 2. Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apocalypse but adopted by the gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none, and in one of his many displays of pure power, he completely wipes out his father. When Darkseid came to Earth, heroes like the Atom and an empowered Jimmy Olsen fought him until a boom tube opened up and Orion came out. The heroes stood aside and let Orion fight Darkseid on his own, and he absolutely wrecked the guy in one slog of a fight. At the end of the fight, after beating down on Darkseid to the level of wiping out entire city blocks, Orion wiped out Darkseid by plunging his hand straight into his father's chest, grabbing his fiery heart and ripping it out clean, leaving Darkseid as a pile of charred bones. And finally, in at number 1 today, the Sentry. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle the Hulk was sent to Sakaar in by the Illuminati at the beginning blows up, wiping out Hulk's new family and the lives of millions of individuals on Sakaar. This pushes the Hulk into a whole new level of anger, which is directed squarely at the Illuminati. So he headed to Earth with his war sworn. When he got to Earth, after quickly stopping at the moon to wreck Black Bolt, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated, and when that time limit stopped, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, and the Ghost Rider, all while saving innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them only as he sought justice, not to end lives. Well, the Illuminati had one last-ditch effort to stop the Hulk. The Sentry. Coming in against probably the only being who could take it, Sentry unleashed almost everything he had against the Hulk, leveling city blocks and causing a massive column of fire. These two went blow for blow over and over until they both used up so much energy that they reverted back to their regular human forms, with a depowered Bruce Banner getting in a final punch to bring Sentry down.
At number 10, it was just an accident. In one event, Spider-Man accidentally caused the demise of Agent Charlemagne. She put herself in harm's way, intercepting a blow meant for Wolverine, leading to her tragic demise. This incident weighed heavily on Spider-Man's conscience, leaving a lasting impact on him. Despite encounters where he unintentionally caused demises, Charlemagne's loss affected him profoundly, marking the first time he ever felt directly responsible for taking a life. Spider-Man struggled with guilt and remorse, grappling with the weight of his actions, unable to forgive himself for what happened. This experience added a layer of complexity to his journey, highlighting the emotional toll and ethical dilemmas heroes face when confronting the consequences of their actions. At number 9 is his fight against Firelord. Firelord is a cosmic being who's held his own against some heavy hitters like Thor, the X-Men, and even went toe-to-toe with the Phoenix Force. But in one instance, he clashed with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 270. Spider-Man had a different approach, opting to outsmart rather than overpower. He led Firelord on a wild chase through the city, trying unconventional methods to take him out, like luring him into a building set for demolition, or a gas station to explode and exploit his powers. Despite the relentless effort, none of these ploys managed to take Firelord down. The most unexpected strategy of all was simply to, well, punch him a lot. Spider-Man's persistence paid off, and through a frenzied attack, he inadvertently triumphed. So much so that the Avengers had to actually step in and intervene, pulling Spider-Man off of Firelord's body. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Back in Black story, where Spider-Man's shift back to his black costume marks a darker turn. Discovering Kingpin's role in Aunt May's assassination attempt, Peter Parker unleashes his hidden strength. He abandons his usual wit, publicly confronting and absolutely brutalizing Kingpin, revealing the immense power he often restrains against his weaker foes. Spider-Man goes as far as threatening Kingpin's life if he ever endangers the Parkers again, a stance he takes to the extreme in a separate reality explored in the What If series. This narrative showcased Spider-Man's capacity for extreme actions when pushed to his limit, emphasizing the consequences of his unparalleled strength when gone unchecked. At number 7 is the iconic Superior Spidey vs. Scorpion. During the Superior Spider-Man comic arc, where Dr. Octopus seizes control of Spider-Man's body and unleashes a devastating punch that cleanly knocks the jaw off of Scorpion. This punch, almost effortless for Peter Parker, shocked shocks Doc Ock, revealing the immense power Spider-Man had concealed this whole time. It's a stark revelation that Spider-Man had been restraining his immense strength all along. It dawns on Dr. Octopus that Peter Parker was holding back in their battles, a realization that astounds him. The notion that Spider-Man in his kindness or self-restraint had refrained from using his full force against adversaries left Doc Ock surprised at the level of power at Peter Parker's disposal. At number 6 is Morlun. In 2001's The Amazing Spider-Man, a grim brawl unfurled between Spider-Man and the villain Morlun. Unlike his usual foes, Morlun fed on spider essence, making this encounter particularly dangerous for Spidey. But aware of Morlun's weakness to radiation, Spidey weaponized his own tainted spider essence against him. Inflicting a potentially lethal dose, Spider-Man hesitated when Morlun begged for mercy, only for the villain's minion to swiftly finish him off. Though Spider-Man didn't deal the final blow here, he purposefully brought Morlun to the edge of demise. Not only did this arc introduce intriguing new powers to Spider-Man, but also showcased a darker, more ruthless side of the hero, revealing a brutal aspect of Spider-Man's character which hinted at a threshold he'd teeter on, where mercy tangled with the urge for justice. At number 5 is the Grim Hunt. In this saga, the Grim Hunt, Spider faced the Karvinoff family's wrath in their ruthless quest targeting spider-powered heroes. Unlike the typical Spider-Man tales, this story gets intense. You see, when he's pushed to his limit, he unleashes a darker side, and in a shockingly violent act, Spidey uses his unique adhesive abilities to brutally retaliate against a Karvinoff member for eliminating his clone Kane, tearing off the villain's face. Yeah, this narrative marked a departure from Spidey's usual moral code, showcasing a grittier, more aggressive side of our friendly neighborhood hero, revealing how far he'd go and push beyond his limits. At number 4, tossing tanks and trucks. In the heat of battle against Green Goblin, Ultimate Spider-Man did something extraordinary, lifting an 18-wheeler truck and bringing it down on the Green Goblin's face. At just 16, Peter showcased incredible strength, proving that age is no limit to powers. Later, facing the Absorbing Man, Spider-Man intercepted a hurled truck, showcasing his swift reflexes and superhuman strength by stopping an entire armored vehicle mid-air. Even when facing tanks and mercenaries, Spidey didn't hold back. In a high-stakes rescue mission, he hoisted a tank above his head and smashed it down. While Spider-Man's usual strength hovers around 20 tons, moments like these reveal his ability to push beyond that, especially when lives are on the line. At number 3, benching entire buildings. In Spider-Man Final Chapter, he's holding up the entire Daily Bugle, not for himself, but for everybody else's safety. And that's no easy feat too, especially when the city he's trying to protect starts turning against him. Plus, Aunt May's on a ticking time bomb, and so talk about the pressure. Here's the thing about Spidey, even when the world is on his shoulders, he doesn't buckle. He pushes through, stops that bomb, and keeps the Bugle from becoming a pile of rubble. In a separate issue, Dr. Kirk Connors aimed to use a contraption within New York's sewers to rid himself of the reptilian transformation. However, unbeknownst to him, a lethal trap awaited beneath Penn Station. As Spider-Man attempted to reason with the lizard, chaos ensued. Consumed by his primal instincts, the lizard brought Penn Station crashing down, burying Spider-Man under its colossal weight. Aware that even the mighty Thor would falter beneath such an overwhelming burden, Peter grappled with the weight, his muscles straining against the impossible load. Yet against all odds, determination surged within him, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He defied the impossible, summoning the strength to lift the collapsed station, liberating himself from the wreckage's grasp. And lastly in this entry is in If This Be My Destiny, Spider-Man faced a monumental challenge, an entire underwater facility collapsing atop of him. Weakened by a prior fight, he struggled immensely, unable to lift the colossal weight off of himself, submerged underwater. Faced with Aunt May's life on the line, Spider-Man almost gave up before remembering how he failed to save his Uncle Ben. Unwilling to let it happen again with Aunt May, Peter resolves to fight on and lifts the giant mechanism to free himself, summoning every ounce of strength to hoist the structure, facing excruciating pain in the process. At number 2 is Juggernaut. In the showdown titled Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, Spider-Man faced a real tough time. It was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. You see, nothing Spidey tried seemed to make a dent in stopping that big tough dude. The Juggernaut's on a mission to nab Madame Web, thinking that her powers will give him an edge against the X-Men. But Web gets the heads up and rings Spidey for help. The thing is, it's not smooth sailing. Spider-Man tries all all of his moves, but nothing sticks. The Juggernaut is just too strong and relentless. He gets dangerously close to taking Madame Web out for good, and that's when Spider-Man goes all in. He doesn't hold back anymore. Leading the Juggernaut to a construction zone, he cooks up a plan and then bam, traps him in wet cement. Goes to show that sometimes it's not about brute strength, but about how smart and persistent you are. And in that moment, Spidey proved that determination and quick thinking can win even the toughest battles. And at number 1 is his fight against Green Goblin. When Spider-Man faced a devastating loss of Gwen Stacy, he vowed revenge against the Green Goblin. Fueled by emotions, Spidey nearly succumbs to the urge and ends the villain's life, thrashing him around with a barrage of punches. Yet amidst the chaos, he pauses, realizing his core principles. Spidey refuses to compromise his heroism by resorting to unaliving. Despite the intense desire for justice, Spider-Man confronts the Goblin, opting to defeat rather than execute. Unfortunately, Goblin had other plans concerning his glider, and I'm pretty sure we all know the rest. Spider-Man, relying on his heightened senses, narrowly avoids a fatal blow from the villain's glider, ending Green Goblin's reign without compromising his own moral code.
The inciting incident for why Peter goes off the deep end is covered in the first part of the story, and the rest is simply about what happens as a result, with Peter even returning to his black costume in the end. Not the symbiote one, just borrowing the look of that costume to reflect the fact that all color and witty quips has left him, and his approach to crime fighting. Peter, MJ, and Aunt May are all outside reminiscing about Uncle Ben, when suddenly Aunt May is shot. MJ calls 911, and Peter frantically looks around to see if he can spot a shooter, but realizing that the clock is ticking and there isn't even enough time for them to wait for an ambulance for May, Peter, without his costume on, swings his way through the city and delivers her to the hospital. Meanwhile, in prison, the Kingpin receives a cryptic message from a police officer and shares his favorite quote that Euripides from the play Medea speaks: "Whom the gods would destroy, they first drive mad." Peter sets out to find out who has done this to Aunt May, mainly blaming himself though, as Peter usually does. However, here he maybe has a little bit of a reason to do that. This is because this storyline takes place after the events of the First Civil War. Now, during the First Civil War, Peter was convinced by Tony Stark's Iron Man, whom he was aligned with at the start of that event, publicly unmasked to promote the Superhero Registration Act. Peter does this, but later decides that Tony is actually in the wrong and allies himself instead with Captain America, which means since his identity as Spider-Man is public, that he and his family are constantly on the run, hopping from motel to motel. If he had never unmasked, he figures, Aunt May would have never been targeted. Probably true. Before he leaves MJ and Aunt May, he urges MJ to check Aunt May in under her maiden name, Riley, in order to protect her from further attacks. Peter returns to investigate and finds a police officer at the shooter's perch with a sniper rifle and scope nearby. He webs up the officer and basically leaves him there, just taking the scope with him, on the trail of who supplied the weapon. He finds an illegal weapon sale going on and he breaks it up, still in his civilian clothing. When Peter interrogates one of the men involved and he hesitates to give Peter the answer Peter's looking for, Peter breaks his hand. Back at the hospital, MJ visits Aunt May, whose status is critical. The doctors tell MJ that May is in a coma and that due to her old age, she is struggling to heal even with the help of the machines they have her hooked up to. As a result, they are almost certain that she won't make it. Peter swings his way up to the top of a tall building to retrieve something. This item is all webbed up, but he undoes the webbing to reveal his cloth black suit the Black Cat made for him, which he initially stopped wearing because he felt it sent the wrong message. He once again dons this suit, as I said earlier, and vows not to rest until he kills the person who is responsible for the attack on Aunt May, and finally get his revenge. In his hunt to track down Aunt May's shooter, he learns that Jake Martino was the one who purchased the specific scope he found at the scene of the crime. He discovers this after throwing one of the arms dealers that he's questioning out of a window, catching him at the last second with a thread of webbing, prompting the man to reveal the buyer as Jake. Initially, this guy didn't want to answer his questions, but throw someone out a window, all of a sudden they're changing their tune. Peter then tracks Jake down and beats him brutally, even breaking his arm. Right when Jake is about to name who hired him, however, he is shot in the chest. The person who shot Jake gets away, but Peter manages to at least hit him with a spider tracer. An ambulance arrives to take Jake to the hospital, and Spider-Man goes along with him. But unfortunately, Jake dies before he can answer the question he was about to answer before he was tragically shot in the chest. Once at the hospital, Peter runs into MJ, who passes on the tragic news that the doctors gave her. May is not going to make it. Heading back out, Spider-Man tracks down the shooter who got away, just just as he's on the phone with someone. Peter webs up his mouth and listens to who is on the other end, hearing the voice of Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. Fisk then asks Peter what he can do for him, and Peter responds that, well, Fisk can die. After learning who was on the phone, Peter questions the shooter, who we learn is named Jim. He finds out that Jake was actually hired to shoot Peter, not May. Spider-Man then asks why Jim shot Jake, and the man simply says that he knew something that Wilson Fisk didn't, but as to what, he doesn't know. That's all he knows. Meanwhile, back in prison, Fisk is approached by the same police officer as before. This time, Fisk has a favor to ask of him. The police officer says he'll do whatever Fisk asks as long as it doesn't break the rules. Wilson Fisk responds by saying what he is asking is beyond the rules, then smashes to pieces the desk he has in the cell and reveals that it is filled with millions of dollars in cash. He tells the officer to divide the money amongst the officers in the prison. The officer frees Fisk, and Wilson asks him to bring Fisk his usual attire. Peter takes Jim down to the sewers and ties him up, leaving him to the mercy of the rats. As Peter talks about the food chain threatening Jim, Jim becomes scared and pleads with Spider-Man, saying he'll do anything he wants. Spider-Man sees that Jim was really just another victim of Kingpin and decides not to kill him, but does tell Jim to spread the word amongst his friends to leave him and his family alone or else. Then he leaves, heading back to the hospital to pay May another visit. Hoping that his healing factor will help her, he gives her some of his own blood via a transfusion. Finally knowing who is behind the hit, he heads to the prison in his black suit to finally confront the Kingpin. Upon breaking into the prison, Peter finds Wilson surrounded by other inmates. He and Fisk fight, and Kingpin taunts him for believing in the greater good. This pushes Spider-Man to a breaking point, and he beats Fisk to within an inch of his life. He says that while Spider-Man will not kill him, Peter will. Unmasking, Peter taunts and torments Fisk, saying how easy it would be with his super strength to crush Fisk, and even threatening to suffocate Fisk by shooting his webbing up Fisk's nostrils. Eventually, Kingpin shouts at Peter that if he really is going to kill him, then he should just do it now and be done with it. However, Peter responds that he won't kill him. At least not yet. He says he has done one better by defeating him and proving in front of all the other inmates at the prison how weak Wilson Fisk is. He warns everyone in the prison that if any of them ever come for him or his family, they will end up like Fisk. And he also says that Kingpin's life is now tied to May's. If she dies, then Peter will return and finish the job. Peter then leaves the prison. A defeated Kingpin and all the inmates slowly and solemnly return to their cells. Following the confrontation, Peter and MJ are forced to confront the fact that while the hospital Peter brought her to is the best, they can't really afford to keep May there. They've been paying exclusively in cash, and it's only a matter of time before someone becomes suspicious. However, Peter is distraught at the thought of moving May, so MJ agrees that they can wait a little bit longer. Peter stays up all night talking to Aunt May, hoping she'll wake up and respond, but she never does. When he steals one of her blood work reports, he learns that his blood transfusion has basically made no difference. May isn't getting better. At this point, the police show up to ask some questions. Peter senses they are in trouble with his spider sense tingling, and he is able to hide, turn off the lights, and incapacitate the officer so he, MJ, and May can escape. They illegally transport May to a new, more affordable hospital in order to protect all of their identities. This really was one of Peter's darkest eras, to be honest. Even by the end of this story, we're left with a pretty bleak resolution. May is still in the hospital, she's still on her deathbed, no longer even getting the best care possible, and Peter and MJ are both still on the run as Peter is still technically a fugitive, being hunted down by S.H.I.E.L.D. for being anti-registration. At the end of the story, Peter reflects on just how low he has fallen, acknowledging that he has committed at least 9 felonies during these events. And what's worse, his fingerprints are basically everywhere, so he could very well be arrested and convicted for these crimes. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it out in the J. Michael Straczynski and Ron Garney run of The Amazing Spider-Man from issues 539 to 543, or you can just grab a trade paperback collection of the story, which is titled Back in Black, from your local library or your local comic shop.
In at number 10, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is an Omega-level mutant who has depicted vast reality manipulation abilities. He's capable of manipulating matter and energy, projecting energy, creating incredibly detailed pocket universes, and a whole array of psionic abilities. For his age, the kid is wickedly strong and he's potentially the most powerful being in existence. The reason Franklin Richards doesn't rank higher on our list though is because of his inexperience, which arguably is a factor holding him back, if you're looking at the main 616 version of the character. That being said, looking to his older self from Earth 4280, we know that his vast powers only continue to excel with age. He literally destroys 2 Celestials, then hangs out with Galactus, noting that the two of them will witness the beginning of a new universe together billions of years from now. Meaning, kid is immortal. Moving on to number 9, Iceman. Iceman Bobby Drake is a curious case. For starters, this early initial member of the X-Men had a much more limited range of powers back when he was first introduced. For the most part, it consisted of him being able to turn his body into an ice form and then freeze the air around him in order to make ice constructs. But in the following years, he got a serious power upgrade. Emma Frost would eventually take over his body, real briefly, unlocking a variety of different skills his powers entailed, all ones that Bobby had never pulled off himself, dropping him into Omega level territory. He would ask Emma to train him, but she refused. Overall, he is a case of a character who hasn't really applied himself, which is him holding himself back. He also held himself back because of other insecurities too, including his sexuality, something that was dabbled in more recent comics. Moving on to number 8, Gladiator. Gladiator's potency of abilities is dictated by his levels of confidence. So let's backtrack. Gladiator, aka Clark, first appeared in the comics in X-Men issue 107 from 1977, an analog to Superboy and an homage to Philip Wiley's novel Gladiator, which was written in 1930, and DC Superman was also partially based off of that. Fun fact, Clark is actually a combination of Kal-El and Clark Kent. And his powers? Well, get ready for an impressive list here. He has superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, reflexes, and durability. Flight, psionic abilities. He is strong enough to shatter a planet, capable of withstanding heat emitted from the Phoenix Force, has heat vision hotter than a star, and his warp speed flight allows him to move 100 times the speed of light, moving across galaxies before Heimdall could even blink in Mighty Thor issue 15 from 2016. But all of that is moot depending on his confidence levels. His powers decrease or increase based on his confidence and self-esteem, meaning he is technically his own worst enemy. And at number 7, Zatanna. Zatanna is yet another character held back by her confidence levels. The difference between her and Gladiator though is that her lack of self-esteem has actually caused the character to completely depower herself in the past, and plays out as much more of an ongoing struggle in the comics. Zatanna is a magical superhero who inherited her gifts from her father, allowing her to not only cast spells but manipulate magic as well. If her self-confidence is weakened, her abilities become hindered. In the past, due to a series of mistakes that she had made, she became completely powerless for a time. And at 6, Captain Atom. Captain Atom is a case of a hero who is already quite powerful but is limited by his own fears that if he were to fulfill his full potential, he may lose his humanity. Talking Dr. Manhattan style here. So Captain Atom, in theory, has no limit to his powers. His abilities come from his atoms continuously splitting and reforming, which gives him an infinite amount of power, limited only by his willpower and his imagination. He can manipulate energy, is self-sustaining, has super strength that matches that of Superman's, and can travel faster than the speed of sound. If he absorbs too much energy at once though, he can be transported through time uncontrollably. Now his power source is linked to something called the strong nuclear force, which binds protons to the nucleus. His atoms can lose coherence if he uses too much power in a short space of time, but it is speculated that he'll be able to overcome this at some point, meaning only his own willpower to retain his humanity is what prevents him from further excelling. And at number 5, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange generally has a very strong sense of what is right and what is wrong, and what he should meddle with and what he shouldn't. Often he finds himself practicing restraint in situations he'd dominate and solve much quicker if he were to intervene. Case in point, Civil War. The Watcher commented that Strange could have ended the conflict with a mere thought, implying that the Sorcerer Supreme has a whole lot more power than he's letting on. Instead, Strange went off to meditate in seclusion, letting Cap and Iron Man duke it out. There have also been times when Strange's hand was forced and he called upon powerful dark magic, like when he battled the Hulk post-Civil War, which caused him to lose the title of Sorcerer Supreme briefly. It just goes to show that Strange has the best interests of the Earth at heart, unwilling to use riskier and deadlier forms of magic he has at his disposal in order to get what needs to be done. And at number 4, Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is not just one individual. The character who first debuted in More Fun Comics issue 55 back in 1940 is a long line of sorcerers, each who had come upon Nabu the Wise, a god who granted them their power along with the Helmet of Fate, a mystical artifact that transforms its host into a powerful master of magic. Those donning the Dr. Fate mantle are capable of spellcasting, flight, telekinesis, telepathy, pyrokinesis, superhuman strength, invulnerability, and lightning manipulation. But here's the kicker. Nabu calls the shots, to an extent. event. If Nabu doesn't agree with what the iteration of Fate is doing, Fate's powers can be limited. In the initial Dr. Fate's case, Ken Nelson, if he was separated from the helm, he is significantly weakened but not entirely depowered, which is another thing. That aside, if Dr. Fate were to go full-blown homicidal or use his near-limitless sorcery powers to wreak havoc, there's a good chance that Nabu would prevent him from causing too much damage. Up next at 3, Havoc. Havoc is Cyclops' brother, a mutant with cosmic energy absorption and plasma discharge abilities. The waves of plasma energy can emanate from his body in all directions unless he channels it purposefully in a single direction. Generally, he wears a special containment suit, often with an indicator on his chest depicting how much cosmic radiation he has absorbed, and how much he has left within his cells. The concentration that's required of Havoc in releasing his energy in focused beams can be exhausting, especially over an extended period. And that's exactly why he's on this list. If he weren't focusing and allowing his plasmic energy just to shoot out of his body without a direction, his impact would be much more destructive. His plasma wave discharges can superheat and disintegrate objects or beings. So really, it is for the best that he holds back and concentrates so no one accidentally ends up dead. And at number 2, Professor X. Professor Charles Xavier is one of the most noble characters in Marvel's roster. First appearing in the X-Men issue 1 in 1963, this exceptionally powerful telepath is one of the most powerful psychics in the Marvel Universe. He has often sacrificed his own desires for the betterment of mutant kind, constantly striving for the greater good by promising a peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans. But there have been a good number of times where Xavier's more repressed, darker emotions have been released from him, causing devastating effects. Specifically in 1996, the sentient psionic entity Onslaught was created from the merging of a darker aspect of Xavier and Magneto's consciousness. During a battle between the X-Men and Magneto and his acolytes, Xavier used his telepathic abilities to shut down Magneto's mind, making him catatonic. The darkest aspect of Magneto's mind emerged and escaped into Xavier's subconscious, taking hold of Xavier's repressed darker nature until it grew into a persona of its own. And finally, at number 1, Sentry. Sentry, aka Robert Reynolds, has a slew of abilities that makes him one of the most powerful characters in Marvel's universe. Or multiverse rather. This includes superhuman strength, speed and stamina, a regenerative healing ability, molecular manipulation, matter manipulation, he's invulnerable, telepathic, can bend time, shapeshift, can become invisible, can astral project, and of course he is immortal. And there's more too that we've listed a zillion times on this channel. While the source of his powers has changed over the years, initially he got his abilities from a super soldier-esque serum that moves his molecules an instant ahead of the current timeline. But here's the kicker. Because of his powers, he's got an entity within him that's a dark side effect. The eroded humanity within Sentry known as the Void, who has his own set of dark powers that include infinity tendrils that attack a victim's mind, impaling them with traumatic visions of the past, present, and future. But now we come to his restriction. In order to prevent the Void from causing catastrophic damage, Sentry worked with Dr. Doom and Reed Richards to wipe out not only his own memory, but the memory of the hero and his evil half from the entire Marvel universe as a means of protecting it. Those are some real drastic measures.
Number 10. Booster Gold. Firstly, Booster's powers are tech-based, yes, but they still count. Michael Carter, aka Booster Gold, first appeared in Booster Gold number 1 back in 1986, and has changed a lot since his first appearance, though in adaptation form he is often stuck in that mode that he first appeared in. Booster is just an average person in the 25th century living in Gotham, down on his luck after he had been caught throwing football games. He ended up in disgrace and was working in a museum as a night watchman, and with the help of the security robot Skeets, he stole a bunch of tech and combined it to create his costume and went back in time pretending to be a hero from the future. At first he was really only interested in the fame and the merchandising. So much merchandising. But over time he transitioned into a real hero, and is sometimes quite crippled by the weight of the power he holds, particularly time travel. Booster can go and change pretty much anything, but there will be ramifications. Possibly one of the saddest time travel Booster stories is when he went back in time to save his best friend, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, from being killed by Maxwell Lord. However, this messed up the timeline, but he was willing to live with it, just so that he could have his friend back. But when the Blue Beetle found out, he couldn't let him be so selfish and voluntarily went back to take his place in the timeline. Booster has to keep his selfish nature in check when it comes to time travel, and for the most part he does. Uses it pretty responsibly, but it weighs on him. Holding back can be a burden, but it's part of what makes one a true hero. Number 9. Black Bolt. Time to get real obvious. Black Bolt first debuted in Fantastic Four number 45 back in 1965 and is a core member of the Inhumans, royalty. He can't speak. I mean, he can, but he shouldn't. His speech center in his brain is different. It produces an unknown particle that interacts with the electrons in his brain, which has caused him to have the most devastating sonic scream out there. Just whispering, he could destroy pretty much anything and anyone. Now, Black Bolt can control and channel his powers a bit with the help of his costume. That top part is a tuning fork, it's not just decoration. But he's hyper aware of this, and so is always very careful. Still, you learn a lot when you can't speak. Black Bolt knows things. And he's a secret weapon when you really need someone stopped. You can convince him to speak, and he only needs to say one thing, and that's it. Number 8, the Scarlet Witch. So her powers have been tweaked and retweaked over time. They're trying to get away from the all-consuming reality warping powers that gave the world House of M and the whole No More Mutants thing. But for a time, and she still kinda does, have to be hyper aware of her powers, because she had a history of triggering them subconsciously based on her own desires, like the saga of her and Vision's children, which has been rendered more complicated in the modern era. Wanda Maximoff first debuted in the X-Men number 4 back in 1964 and has changed a lot since then. Her powers are now in the chaos magic realm with a mutant element on top, so there's more control, which is good, because the ability to change whatever one wants, that's a lot of a lot. It would and does drive most who hold it mad. Too much power, too much, beyond Omega. Number 7, Cable. Here we're getting into the has to hold back category, or rather had to hold back. He first appeared as Cable in the New Mutants number 87 back in 1990. He had been introduced as Nathan Summers in 1986. Back then he was just a baby and not a man out of time. Cable has very powerful telekinetic powers, but initially he had to use them to keep the techno-organic virus he was suffering from spreading to the rest of his body. That used to be the source of his cool metal arm. When he doesn't have to hold back, Cable is a force to be reckoned with. It's that dangerous combination of telepathy and telekinesis, along with that sense of self-righteousness he inherited from his father Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Cable has built his own utopian floating city. That was during the Deadpool and Cable team-up. Good times. Cable is one who has fluctuating powers. He has them all. Oh no, they're gone. Oh yay, some of them are back. It just depends which area you're in. Number 6, Liz Sherman. Liz Sherman was first seen in Hellboy Seed of Destruction back in 1994, and is a being of immense power that she does not want and struggles to control. Her holding back is that quest for control and a fear of what happens when she loses it. Liz has pyrokinesis, the fire-starting ability, and oh, what a fire it is. Her powers manifested when she was 10 years old, and because of her strict religious upbringing, she thought they were a punishment from God for her sins. This has caused her to form a very complex relationship with them. It also didn't help that at age 11 she lost control and killed her whole family. To learn to control her powers, she had to learn emotional control, as that is what triggers them. She has to hold back her emotions and keep them on an even keel, all while wrestling with the bitterness her powers have left her with. Not fun. Number 5, the Flash. Any of them, doesn't really matter which. They're always holding back. Their natural speed is now fast. It's not the normal speed that the rest of us are moving at. They're just constantly moving through molasses to make us feel comfortable. Cause if not, it'd be like the Reverse Flash, how he just lets himself vibrate, which is terrifying. Just slightly out of phase. Always kind of crackling, red eyes. But the Flashes don't do that, because they're nice people. Still, there is a sadness to it, and it makes their good cheer more impressive. To always be being a bit out of step, having to be patient always as the people around you move as fast as they can, but it'll never be fast enough for you. It could leave you feeling disconnected, and again, the time travel possibilities of not holding back. Barry Allen created the New 52 reboot because of his meddling, even though the Doomsday crossover was trying to make that Dr. Manhattan's fault, but it took too long to come out. Art delays. We're only on issue 10. It's been years. Number 4, the Spectre. The Spectre first debuted in More Fun Comics number 52 back in 1940. Cliff notes. The Spectre is the spirit of vengeance who carries out his missions through human hosts. The first was Jim Corrigan, a police officer who made the mistake of getting engaged in a fictional story, so he was murdered. The last part was the Golden Age. He became an avenging spirit in the Silver Age, and he can be very harsh. He has godlike powers and can, wait for it, manipulate time and space, control all matter, has invulnerability, and limitless strength. So how is he holding back? Well, he's really held back by the morality of his hosts. The Spectre exists in a kind of dual host-like existence. The host is there, they're not fully subsumed, and they can resist some of the Spectre's more cruel impulses.
You can't kill a dead man.
The guilty must be punished for their crimes.
If they want to. Some hosts just go with it. Corrigan is notable for this. Hal Jordan was also a host for the Spectre, and he always fought him. This was after Hal died redeeming himself by blowing up the sun. He was then the Spectre until he was resurrected. Also, he would still go on dates with Carol as the Spectre. It was kind of awful. She could never move on with her life until she did, and then he came back to life. Poor Carol. Actually, no, she's awful to Hal. One day I'll tell you the full story of how she once got mad at Hal because he blew her off to save a dying planet. I mean, what's more important? Ferrous air being attacked or a planet breaking apart like Krypton? Number 3. Gambit. Gambit is a lot more powerful than people think. He first debuted in Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14 back in 1990. His powers work by converting the potential energy stored in an inanimate object into pure light kinetic energy, and he has a lot of potential to harness energy also. He also has hypnotic charm. In an alternate storyline, when his full potential was reached, he became New Sun. In this state, he could control all aspects of kinetic energy down to the molecular level, so he could manipulate the potency of energy, which yes, was as terrifying as it sounds. He could then simulate pretty much any type of energy, and of course time travel and cross dimensions in space, and just remake things to his will by turning into pure energy and joining the kinetic flow. Thankfully, the Gambit this happened to was an alternate reality one. Main vs. Gambit actually went up against this counterpart and was left less powerful as a result. Also, Gambit can now convert inert materials into toxic substances. It's a good thing Gambit just likes throwing his playing cards, because he could kill us all. Powers on top of powers, with X-Men, sometimes too much. Blame Grant Morrison and secondary mutations, and also the ever-sliding power scale. Number 2. Reed Richards. This is a case of a couple of things. Sometimes he forgets about his abilities because he defeats his enemies more with his intellect and inventions. Another way he's holding back is that he can be a lot more devilish than he is in terms of proactively destroying threats, but the only thing holding him back is what Sue would think. We've seen this a few times. There was a what-if story. What if Sue Storm died in childbirth, and after she dies, Reed just goes off the deep end, murdering their villains, claiming she was the only thing stopping him, but with her gone, what's the point? The sketchy things he does, he also does behind her back. The Council of Reeds, when he joined that League of Alternate Universe Reeds, most of which had gauntlets. The whole Illuminati thing. So his family and love, but specifically Sue, is all that's keeping Reed in check. She can't leave him for Namor, and Namor's been trying hard. He even told Reed he was trying, but that she wouldn't leave. The modern Fantastic Four run is trying to pretend Sue and Namor aren't a thing, for some reason. But I'll never forget. Bearded nice guy Reed? We'll see how long that lasts. Number 1. Superman. Hey, obvious, but he deserves it. The Man of Steel is always holding back. The launcher of the golden age of both heroes and comics has seen his powers grow a lot since his creation in 1938. His strength and potential are held in check by his inherent goodness and belief in humanity. When he uses his full potential, we usually end up with a dark Superman. Somebody mentioned it in the comments of part 1, and I was going to mention it anyway, but one of the best examples of this is from the finale of the Justice League Unlimited, when Superman fights Darkseid and gives his famous "I feel like I live in a world of cardboard" speech.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
Superman has been holding back since he was a child. At this point, it's a habit, second nature, and thank goodness for that. The world couldn't handle a Superman always using his full power set, no matter how much kryptonite Batman has. Side note, does anyone else remember that story where Bruce helped Clark find and destroy all the kryptonite in the world? I was like, aw, sweet, and also like, that would never happen simultaneously.
Number 10. Robin. Perhaps the most iconic sidekick in history is Robin the Boy Wonder, who is the young ward of Batman. Robin first appeared in 1940's Detective Comics number 38, less than a year after Batman was introduced. Taking inspiration from both Robin Hood and the Bird, Batman and Robin are as iconic and dynamic a duo as milk and cookies. The first and most well-known Robin is Dick Grayson, a former trapeze artist who was adopted by Batman after his parents were killed. Robin had a tendency in his earlier appearances to be constantly captured and needing to be rescued by Batman, an aspect of the character that was also present in his appearances in the 1960s Batman TV show, where he was played by Burt Ward. However, Dick Grayson and most of the other characters who have become Robin have since been written to be a valuable member of the team, rescuing Batman just as often as he rescues them. With the introduction of the third Robin, Tim Drake, it was also revealed that part of the reason that Robin is so important is that he brings a bit of light to Batman's Dark Crusade, preventing him from being too dark and depressing. So I guess Robin Robin does hold Batman back, but in a good way. Number 9. Rick Jones. When Bruce Banner was testing his gamma bomb, a young teenager named Rick Jones drove out onto the test site on a dare, unaware that he was about to get hit in the blast. Banner rescued him but was hit by the gamma bomb and transformed into the Incredible Hulk. So right off the bat, Rick held back Banner from ever having a normal life. He became the Hulk's sidekick for many years, aiding the Green Goliath and more importantly, doing his best to hold back the Hulk from destroying everything in his path. He is also in frequent need of rescue, but did eventually become the gamma-powered hero known as Abel. Rick has also served as a sidekick to other Marvel heroes over the years, including Captain America and Captain Marvel. Number 8. Uncle Marvel. Of all of the sidekicks of the original Captain Marvel, or Shazam if you prefer, Uncle Dudley is by far the most useless. While the other members of the Marvel family, like Mary Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr., get their powers from Billy Batson's hero persona and from the wizard Shazam, Dudley is actually a fraud with no powers to speak of. He isn't even actually their real uncle. He's just some old dude who decided to con his way into the family. While other members of the family will say their magic word and instantly be transformed into their hero selves, costume and all, Dudley will wait until no one is looking and then frantically tear off his clothes to reveal a homemade supersuit that he wears underneath. Everyone is aware of his lack of powers but goes along with the charade because they think it's funny. Whenever he was asked to use his powers, he would complain that his Shazambago was acting up and that he couldn't do it right now but totally could some other time. So he has no powers and is really more of a liability than a help to the team, as he runs into danger with them and they constantly have to keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't get horribly murdered, while they also deal with the supervillain. In fairness to Uncle Marvel, in the villain Black Adam's first appearance in Marvel Family number 1, it was Uncle Marvel who defeated him when the team was at a stalemate with the villain by suggesting that he be allowed to join the team, as he also had gotten his powers from the wizard Hashaz. No, I mean Shamhaz. This caused Black Adam to interrupt Dudley and fall into his trap by correcting him, saying, "You sputtering old fool, you mean Shazam!" causing him to be depowered and defeated by the Marvels. Number 7. Herbie. This character is proof that Marvel having to deal with weird rights issues is by no means a recent thing. In 1978, Marvel was trying to get an animated series based off of the Fantastic Four produced. However, they had already issued the rights to make a movie based off of the Human Torch to another company, and therefore could not use Johnny Storm in their series. Needing a new fourth member of the team, Stan Lee pitched the idea of a cute robot sidekick to round out the team, and he had Jack Kirby design Herbie in what would be Kirby's last contribution to Marvel Comics. Herbie was eventually brought into the comics, where he was created by Mr. Fantastic as a robot to help him search for Galactus. Unfortunately, a villain named Dr. Sun was able to transfer his intelligence into Herbie and could control the robot whenever he wanted in efforts to sabotage the Fantastic Four, making Herbie a sleeper agent who was actually doing more harm to the team than good. Herbie eventually sacrificed himself to defeat Dr. Sun, but various Herbie robots have been built in the years since for the purposes of general work and of acting as a nanny for Franklin Richards. After the Fantastic Four removed his inhibitor chip, Herbie lashed out, left, and joined the AI Army, a violent group working for the cause of robot liberation. Number 6. Moon Boy. So Devil Dinosaur is from the dinosaur world of Earth 78,411, who was captured by a tribe of creatures who killed his mother and siblings and then tried to burn him in an attempt to appease an erupting volcano. The volcano caught the young T-Rex in its fire and turned him red, and he became known as Devil Dinosaur. He was aided by an early hairy humanoid called Moon Boy, and the two became partners. Moon Boy doesn't really do much or bring much to the table, and spends a lot of time providing moral support from the sidelines. He is occasionally captured, but overall he doesn't get much to do. I mean, how much help can a monkey man really give to a T-Rex? Number 5. Jimmy Olsen. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is quite often more trouble than he's worth, with him often being kidnapped by aliens, sent back in time, or forced to marry a gorilla. He has such a tendency to get himself in trouble, Superman had to give him a signal watch that would let him know whenever Jimmy was in trouble. When you consider how many people need help from Superman at any given moment, it makes you wonder how many people have died needlessly in fires because Jimmy has been turned into a human porcupine and needs help. To be fair, Jimmy has saved Superman's life a few times over the years and has been given superpowers at various times over the years, which he has used to be an effective hero, but he does slow Superman down with his constant need to be rescued. Number 4. Doiby Dickles. Charles Doiby Dickles is an old school cab driver from Brooklyn who was the sidekick of the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. His nickname is actually Derby after the hat he's always wearing, but his heavy accent makes him pronounce it Doiby. He was a skilled street fighter and a good driver with a love for his car, Goitrude. When acting as Alan Scott's sidekick, he would often wear a similar costume and be called Devastating Doiby. Now, having a chauffeur character to help you get around isn't that weird. Hell, it worked for Green Hornet. But Green Lantern can fly. So when he hangs out with Doiby, it's actually slowing him down. And it's not like Doiby is useful enough to justify the delay. He has no powers, he's just a normal dude who attacks people with a wrench. He left the planet for several years after an alien princess named Princess Ramia married him, and the pair ruled the planet Murg, or as he calls it, Moig. Number 3. Wendy and Marvin. When Hanna-Barbera adapted the heroes of the DC universe for the small screen in the animated Super Friends show, which featured Batman, Robin, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Superman teaming up to fight crime, in an effort to give kids some characters to relate to and presumably forgetting that Robin was already a teenage superhero, the team was also saddled with 2 teenagers named Wendy and Marvin and their dog, Wonder Dog. Wendy wasn't much help, and Marvin was a straight up idiot, but there they were, with no explanation, hanging out with the superheroes. As writers Timothy and Kevin Burke stated in their book Saturday Morning Fever, Wendy and Marvin were the ultimate degenerate form of the kid's sidekick, about as useful to the Super Friends as a burst appendix. They existed primarily to be rescued and to help illustrate the moral message of the week. Wonder Dog was a Fred Silverman-inspired dog sidekick, part of the shameful lineage which would eventually result in a later incarnation of Spider-Man being burdened with a little white Yap Yap dog. Silverman and other Kidvid producers had an E-Day fix that the presence of a dog inevitably made a cartoon attractive to kids. The pair were so useless that they were replaced by the Wonder Twins in the next incarnation of the Super Friends. Number 2. Alpha. Spider-Man was one of the first superheroes to prove that teenagers didn't have to just be sidekicks and could in fact be their own heroes, which is why it's kind of weird for him to get a teenage sidekick. Andy Maguire was a normal student at Midtown High, Peter Parker's old school. He was a painfully average student who was mostly ignored by his teachers, parents, and fellow students. One day, Peter Parker was presenting a demonstration at Horizon Labs, and an accident caused Andy to develop superpowers such as energy manipulation, force field projections, telekinesis, flight, and matter manipulation, among others. So, what's the problem? That sounds like a character who could somewhat keep up with Spidey. Well, he was such a bad sidekick that when Spider-Man brought him to try and help the Avengers battle Terminus, Alpha was so irresponsible with his powers that several aircraft began malfunctioning and plummeting to the ground. The Avengers and Spider-Man had to rescue all of the passengers, just barely being able to avoid a colossal body count. Spider-Man decided Alpha was too irresponsible to have superpowers and created a machine that took away Alpha's powers. Number 1. Snapper Carr. You may know that the Justice League was first introduced as an updated version of the Justice Society in 1960's Brave and the Bold number 28. You may know that the League consisted of 7 members: Aquaman, Batman, Green Lantern, The Flash, Wonder Woman, Superman, and Martian Manhunter. But do you remember the 8th member of the Justice League who was introduced in their first appearance? While developing the Justice League, DC executive editor Whitney Ellsworth insisted that the team have a hip-talkin' young teenage character who the young readers could relate to. Thus, Snapper Carr was created. He didn't have any powers and was a civilian who would constantly snap his fingers. As he explained it to the Flash in his first appearance, "You hear these fingers snapping, Flash? That's my way of showing I like something. That's why the cats around here call me Snapper." Flash decides to bring this young weirdo into battle because he may be the key to the League's success or failure against Starro the Conqueror. After Starro was defeated, he was made an honorary member of the League and was present for several of the stories in the team's first decade. As mentioned before, he does nothing except snap his fingers and was more team mascot than anything else. But as the sidekick of the entire League, he held them back in a massive way when he was tricked by the Joker into revealing the location of the League headquarters years, forcing the League to spend valuable time relocating to a space satellite. Snapper was not allowed to come along. Snapper was briefly given teleportation powers in an effort to make him useful, but is a mostly forgotten character now.
Number 10. The Beast. The blue bouncing beast is more known for his super intellect than his super strength, although really super strength is his real mutant ability. His brute strength, durability, and super dexterity are the powers that he was granted by his mutation. So why do we know him more for his intellect? Beast prefers to stay out of fighting when it can be avoided, and is often recognized as an academic and pacifist. Part of the reason he holds back when he is fighting probably comes back to those beliefs, as well as his fear of his more animal nature. The times that he is held back when it comes to fighting probably has to do with a few events following his transformation into his beast-like form. As you'll recall, he didn't always look as he does. He used to look like an almost completely normal human, and then he was also a grey beast for a while. Soon after he was transformed, he was drugged and hunted by Kraven, causing him to resort to a feral-like state. He almost killed Kraven near the end of the story, and later in the comics was manipulated into believing that he'd killed Iron Man. Both events were like a living nightmare for the mostly peaceful Hank. Number 9. Deku. When Deku from My Hero Academia receives his all-for-one quirk from All Might, he is forced to hold back his powers, as using them at full strength would destroy him. The power of All for One basically allows him to store up energy and then release it in one superhuman and often explosive blast. He must train and use the power carefully or risk damaging his entire body. Therefore, he carefully channels the power and controls the percentage of output to avoid injury to himself. And even with reducing it as much as he does and controlling it, his use of the power still causes his hand and fingers, which he channels the power through, to become disfigured. Number 8. Cyclops. The proof is in the pudding with Cyclops, who is forced to hold back his powers simply because he cannot really fully control them. His laser eyes, sorry friends, I'm just kidding, his optic blasts need to be kept in check, or he would just be blowing up stuff left, right, and center. Scott actually has 2 separate ruby quartz visors, one that helps him control his optic blasts and one that he wears when sleeping that completely contains these blasts. And if you don't believe that his powers need to be held back, just look at the evidence. Anytime he loses his visor in the comics or any other media involving the loss of his visor, usually results in him having to close his eyes to protect people. Unless Emma Frost is around to help him have control over this ability, of course. Number 7. Sunspot. Being able to convert solar energy into strength may not seem like it is something that is insanely powerful, but there was a time in the comics that Sunspot almost killed himself while doing this. Yeah, after losing control of his powers as a result of an injury, Roberto was forced to use a regulator headband to help him gain control of his abilities again. He was often depicted wearing the headband in the comics to help him limit the risk of losing control. And when he chose to ditch his regulator band in an attempt to access the full potential of his powers, he was actually warned that this would likely kill him. Fortunately, he managed to survive, but the risk was still very much there. At his full strength, Sunspot was even referred to as the strongest Avenger. Granted, this was Roberto himself talking, who is known for being kind of full of himself, so. Number 6. Wonder Woman. An insanely powerful superhero, Wonder Woman's abilities appear almost limitless. She has super breath, is insanely strong, is somewhat telepathic, can fly, and even sometimes can breathe underwater. Does anyone remember when the comics told us she had gills? Weird. Granted, these abilities are surprisingly not her own really, as they are gifts from the gods. But still, one cannot deny that Wonder Woman is pretty much unstoppable. So what is she holding back? Apparently, the full strength of her powers as a demi-goddess. Yep. The Wonder Woman we see in the comics isn't even all that she could be. It has constantly been established that her bracelets of submission are used to keep her powers in check and prevent her from becoming too OP. Number 5. Jean Grey. Another strong woman who has been classified as one of the strongest telepaths in the world, an Omega level mutant who also has telekinetic abilities. You might be thinking that I'm gonna go down one of my favorite paths here with Jean and talk about Phoenix and Dark Phoenix and self-control in regards to those entities that Jean becomes. You'd be wrong. In fact, Jean had to have the full potential locked away from her from a very young age. When she first came to Professor Xavier's school for gifted youngsters, Professor Xavier actually put up psychic shields in her mind, recognizing she was not yet prepared to handle the full potential of her power, as it could put her and others at risk. Number 4. Quicksilver. What happens when you go even faster than the fastest man on Earth? That is something Quicksilver should never venture to answer, and after the events of No Surrender, I'm sure he learned just that. Quicksilver is an arrogant hero who sometimes plays villain and who normally indulges very much in his powers. The rate at which he can travel allows him to dash across oceans, walk on water, dodge bullets, and even time travel. However, during the Avengers No Surrender event, he traveled too fast, even for himself, and seemed to find out why restraining one's powers can be a good thing. In his own series following the comic book event called Quicksilver No Surrender, he seems to get stuck somewhere between time and space, in some kind of weird time-space limbo. The series itself is beautiful, and you should read it. It also involves a lot of self-reflection on Quicksilver's part, but besides that, it also serves to show us why Quicksilver holding back from traveling beyond the fastest he can is a good idea. Number 3. Rogue. You asked for more Rogue from me, and you got her. Coming in at our number 3 spot, Rogue is a hero who has always wanted to hold back. In fact, she is often portrayed as not even wanting to have her powers at all, even sometimes attempting to seek out a cure. The traumatizing experience of her first kiss with Cody Robbins, resulting in him ending up in a coma, has always kind of caused her to wish that she was different and, didn't have powers. She does her best to control, limit, and hold back her powers, being careful not to make physical contact with loved ones, and even when fighting, to limit the physical contact she does make with enemies. Number 2. Adam Warlock. Cosmic superhero Adam Warlock has been presented as one of the few people in the Marvel Universe strong enough to wield the Infinity Gauntlet. While he was persuaded to dismantle it after being convinced that it was too much power for any one person to control, the fact remains that his time on Earth and in space has allowed him to go on adventures which have ended up granting him an off-the-charts level of powers in the comics. Still, he does not often use all his power. Why? After using all his power to combine 2 timelines to close a fault created by one of the Inhumans' T-bomb explosions, he accidentally brings back a reality where he became Magus. As a result, there is a darkness that dwells within Warlock, and whenever he uses too much of his power, he risks releasing it. So in an attempt to keep Magus at bay, he is often forced to hold back at the risk of turning evil. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. A hero who is referred to as a god in DC, Dr. Manhattan's powers grant him omnipotence. Because he carries so much power and also knowledge of all things past, present, and possible futures, he often does not take action. In fact, in the events of the Doomsday Clock, he even refers to himself as a man of inaction. He quarantined himself to Mars and typically does not use his powers to their full capabilities. If you don't believe me, just look at the New 52, which exists because of Dr. Manhattan's interference in the Flashpoint event. I mean, if Dr. Manhattan did not hold back his superpowers as often as he does, we'd probably be seeing a lot more DC reboots than we do.
Number 10. Hal Jordan / Green Lanterns. So the Green Lantern rings function based on the user's willpower. That, and you have to charge them. But the charge is so narratively convenient that you don't need to worry about it too much. So the bearers can use the rings to create constructs, whatever their imaginations can conceive. But there is a built-in restriction, one that is now very present, and that is lethal force is not authorized. One has to break the Lantern code to kill. Hal knows he killed the whole Corps, and then some. So one can get the ring to kill, but it'll send an alert and the rest of the Corps and the Guardians are going to be down on you. So best to hold back and find another solution to your problems. Talking to you, Hal. Yes, I know he was possessed by Parallax. If one does break the code, you pretty much have a limitless weapon at one's disposal. This concept was played with in Dawnbreaker from Metal Knights, the dark Batman who would use the Lantern ring that came to him to kill. This was from the Dark Multiverse stuff. He became pretty much unstoppable thanks to the strength of his will. You need a lot of focus and drive to wield a ring, so it's important to hold back on those murderous impulses. Number 9. Jaime Reyes, the Blue Beetle, the third one. More space and alien artifacts. Jaime Reyes first debuted as the Blue Beetle in Infinite Crisis number 5 back in 2006, but he had appeared as a character 2 issues prior. The story of the third Blue Beetle is a great legacy story. So the first Blue Beetle was Dan Garrett, and Cliff notes he found a mystical scarab that allowed him to fight crime. It was a retcon, initially he was powerless. This was at the very start of the Golden Age. Fast forward, he passed it on to his protege, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, who was never able to get it to work, so instead he became a tech-based hero along the same theme. During Infinite Crisis, the scarab was reinvigorated and attached itself to Jaime Reyes. He was able to access it, and it formed into a protective suit around him with many capabilities. However, it became clear over time that this wasn't just some tech artifact. It began to talk to Jaime, to attempt to influence his actions, increase the amount of force he used, etc. This is more of an adaptation thing though. It turned out that the scarab was a part of the Reach, an alien force at war with the controllers. Depending upon continuity, the holding back Jaime is doing is of the scarab, making sure it uses appropriate force and doesn't overreact to situations in a desire to protect him. It's a symbiotic relationship, but not one anywhere near as intense as, say, Eddie Brock and Venom. It is grafted to his spine though. Ouch. Sadly, Rebirth has retconned pretty much all of this in one of the, in my opinion, missteps, and the scarab is magical again. Number 8. One Punch Man. Firstly, all of you stop being mean to Johnny about his pronunciation. It's different phonetic points, different languages. So the dilemma for very underestimated hero One Punch Man is that he is looking for a villain who he doesn't have to hold back against because he just trained so hard. He was so determined to be the very best, like no one ever was. To punch them was his real test, to beat them was his cause. Only while he is the best. He can KO and explode pretty much any villain with one punch. The punch doesn't even need to land, it's so powerful. Won't someone be there so that Saitama doesn't have to hold back? Make his dreams come true. This is a really fun satirical series, and I feel like we also need to start including heroes from My Hero Academia as well. Thoughts and feelings? I'm sure you'll let me know down below. Number 7. Jason Blood. Gone, gone, the form of man. Rise the demon, Etrigan. I hope you like rhymes, because if not, then oh man, Etrigan is gonna be rough for you. So these characters first appear in The Demon #1 back in 1972. The two are bound together, and Jack Kirby, their creator, had no interest in creating them, but did it because DC wanted horror characters, and he was like, okay fine, here's a demon. There have been some changes in origin, but all in all, it's Merlin who binds Jason and Etrigan together, and the struggle has been real ever since. Jason isn't thrilled about being bound to a demon, and often works hard to live his life without summoning Etrigan at all, and is quite annoyed when some of his magical acquaintances, looking at you Constantine, will force him out. This is because there are some situations where Etrigan's strength and powers are required, but Jason is a skilled sorcerer, so he can avoid having to summon Etrigan for a good while if he's really in a snit. Why doesn't he want him? Well, Etrigan is a sadomasochist and has been known to go too far and torment people because he enjoys it. The two eventually find an even keel and come to respect each other. Etrigan has been largely dormant, but there's rumors about Justice League Dark, so maybe we'll see more of Jason Blood soon. It's a great name. Number 6. Jubilee. Okay, Jubilee is not weak, and she never really was. Her powers were always more than fireworks, even if she herself does describe them that way and can use them as such for entertainment, as she did when she first appeared back in the Uncanny X-Men number 244 back in 1989. Breathe. Now, where a lot of this she's useless comes from is the 90s animated series, where she would consistently be ineffectual with her attacks just bouncing off of things like Sentinels. However, Jubilee actually has enormous potential. Emma Frost has noted that she has the potential to detonate matter at a subatomic level because her power set is that she generates pyrotechnic energy plasmoids. So in short, she could be a walking nuclear bomb. What's holding her back? Well, mental blocks really. She needs to hold back because, well, she could destroy everything, but she was held back by her inability to conceive of wielding that much power. She was always surprised when she leveled up. It's a good thing Jubilee holds back, because with all these people calling her useless, maybe one day she'll just snap. Number 5. Storm. You all have been asking for Storm since part 1. You have been scandalized that she wasn't on these lists. Well, she's here now. She first appeared in Giant X-Men #1 back in 1975. She was part of the big X-Men relaunch with a new lineup that regalvanized the books. The X-Men actually didn't do that well in the 60s. It's only retroactively that people went back and appreciated it. Storm is an Omega level mutant, officially now thanks to House of X. When most people think of her, they think, oh, weather control. But it's so much more than making it rain. She can start tempest, earth-shattering storms, and also manipulate weather on a cosmic level, cosmic storms. And also, like Magneto, she can also mess with the electromagnetic current. Storm doesn't use her full potential because if she did, she would destroy the world. She's only limited by the strength and will of her body. But with all that training, generating a mega earth-ending level storm shouldn't be too difficult. So yeah, Storm holds back because she doesn't want to destroy the Earth. She lives here too. Also, random question. Wolverine in Storm or Black Panther in Storm? Let me know. Number 4, Spider-Man. He's another one that all of you have been clamoring for, and fair is fair, he's a lot more powerful than he appears, or than people give him credit for. Now when people go down the list of Peter's abilities, they often leave super strength down to the bottom, or off entirely. Instead, the attention goes to the wall crawling or the spider sense. But Peter is very strong, and he constantly has to restrain himself from really hurting people, including the villains he's fighting. He can punch Jaws clean off, but he takes with great power comes great responsibility seriously. Don't mess with Spider-Man. Just because he's wiry and doesn't have the bulk, people think, oh, he can't do anything, just puny Parker. Well, that's how you get thrown through a window. Just ask Wolverine. Number 3, the Hulk. How can we keep making these and not talk about Bruce Banner and the Hulk? That's what Bruce has been doing since he became the Hulk. He first appeared in The Incredible Hulk #1 back in 1962. After being bombarded by gamma radiation, when angered or stressed, Bruce Banner transforms into the Hulk, initially a mindless monster. Over time, the Hulk has developed into being his own being, separate from Banner, which has led to even more problems as the two try to reconcile their joint existence. It's gotten even worse in the Immortal Hulk, with poor dead Banner being dragged along by the still living Hulk. So this is a relationship that has changed, but everyone remembers the classic tale of Banner hiding out from the world because any little trigger could set him off and unleash the beast within. A man constantly battling against his own fears, doing nothing but holding back, essentially. Side note, there's one issue where She-Hulk tries to say that her life is worse than his, even though she's a sexy lawyer that everyone likes. Or was a sexy lawyer. Recently she fought for her right to be ugly. Keeping up with comics. Number 2, Invincible. Going back to Kirkman's superhero epic following the life and times of Invincible, aka Marcus Grayson, no relation at all to Dick Grayson. Rick Grayson is dead to me. Invincible is the son of Omni-Man and half Viltrumite. He becomes one of the premier defenders of Earth after the betrayal of his father and the reveal that he was bred to be a weapon to conquer the world. He is incredibly strong, and at first he isn't even aware how much. His training with his father was just coming to a close when everything went down. If he doesn't hold back, he'll just beat his enemies into a bloody pulp, and he has on multiple occasions. Just a bloody mess, complete poundage, a level of gore that is heightened by the bright, happy way the books are drawn. Invincible would go on to become the leader of the Viltrumite Empire, so watch out. So far his reign has lasted centuries. Number 1, Raven. You knew she was coming, you were waiting. Raven is a core member of the new Teen Titans, the result of a forceful coupling between the demon Trigon and her mother Angela Roth. She fled in horror about what had happened, and took her daughter to the alternate dimension of Azarath, where she spent her life trying to teach Raven to suppress her emotions and master her control, a difficult task as Raven is also an empath. She hid her parentage from her for a while in hopes that with proper training she would never be able to access the dark emotion-fueled part of herself, but ultimately she failed. When Raven turned 18, she tried to prevent her father from crossing into Azarath. She is locked in battle with her father and the dark aspects of her nature. Raven has let go before, with disastrous results, far worse than ruining Nightwing and Starfire's wedding, which did happen. While she is a healer, she possesses many of her father's powers and traits and can manipulate darkness. Raven must constantly hold her emotions in check and not be overwhelmed by others, or also her father's forces, lest she give him what he wants and enslave the world. Definitely number 1 worthy.